everyone, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm Malin. Welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before. Usually I cook a lot of vegan food in my kitchen, but sometimes I sit down like this and I talk a little bit about something, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do today. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about why I'm vegan today and why I don't see myself changing that ever really, unless something very drastic happens, and also tell you a little bit about how I became vegan. It wasn't really a very romantic story. It wasn't a straight path. It wasn't that gorgeous ethical connection at first, because for me it started sort of on a winding path, and it started with me actually having food poisoning about 7 or so years ago now, and just for reference, I've been vegan now for 5.5 years. So when I had food poisoning from shellfish, I was really ill for about a week. I couldn't eat anything and I felt really horrible, and you know the rest of what happens with food poisoning. And basically my digestion has never fully recovered from that, and I'm still curious about what is going on in there, but I decided after seeing my GP, who told me that I was now one of these people who have IBS, that I would look into different ways I could deal with this new diagnosis, I guess, of having IBS. And this is when I started changing my diet, and I found that removing eggs and dairy from my diet helped me not to have so many flare-ups and stomach aches, and among other things, of course. But these were two of they were the first animal products that I cut out of my diet, and that was purely for health reasons then. I didn't really have any ethical connections to what was on my plate. I had a sister who was vegetarian and vegan growing up, but somehow I never really saw what she saw. At this time, I had also just moved in with my partner Rob, who I'm still with today, and he was a vegetarian back then. So he definitely influenced me to think more ethically about the food I was eating, and I cut out red meat first. I think this is something that quite a lot of people do. Not that I think is completely sensible now to just cut out eating one type of meat, but that's what I did. And this is when we also started learning how to cook some vegan food, because with me not eating dairy or eggs and Rob being a vegetarian, of course that leaves vegan food, right? So we started learning some recipes, and at first it was a bit of a struggle, to be honest. It's definitely a learning curve, and even back then, this was like 6 years ago, it wasn't as big of a thing to be vegan as it is now. It was definitely starting to be a little bit trendy, but we lived in London then, and it didn't really have many vegan restaurants. I don't even know, maybe it had like 1 or 2, and now it has, a whole lot of them. So lots have happened in this time. And anyways, what happened was that we started learning to cook some vegan food, and then we watched a documentary called Food Inc. And in this documentary they showed some imagery and talked a lot about factory farming, and this is when there's something kind of clicked in my mind, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try to be vegan full time. And in the next few days I committed to this, and I started eating only vegan food. Although in the first 6 months there, I will tell you that I had some sort of slip-ups, or whatever we should call them, and they were all sort of in the company of cheese. Cheese was one of those, it was definitely the thing I found hardest to stop eating completely. But now I will say that the vegan cheeses on the market are so much better than they were then. And having found cashew cheese, like aged vegan cheese, is definitely a little bit of a blessing, and I really enjoy being able to have a more cheese experience as a vegan now. That tastes good. And also on New Year's that year, so I went vegan, or sort of committed more to being vegan full-time, at least with my diet. That was in June. And on New Year's that year, I was at like a fancy party with Rob's family, and there was like a big buffet, and they had sushi there. And sushi used to be my favorite food, or one of my favorite foods, and it still is, although now I eat it, with avocado, veggies, and tofu instead of fish. But on that New Year's Eve, I decided, okay, I'm gonna have sushi. I'm gonna try it. It sounds silly now. I just wanted to like have a little test to see if I could fully commit. I don't know what I was thinking, but apparently that made sense to me then. And I ate some sushi, and to be honest, it didn't sit right with me. I had already made, this ethical connection on some level, and it didn't taste as good as it used to. I don't know, maybe for some people it would, but for me it really didn't. And from that day on, I was committed vegan, and I started to think about veganism on a more deep level, and I started to think about veganism in my lifestyle at large. So for those first 6 months, it was only really about what I was eating. And then from that day, I started learning so much more. We watched plenty more documentaries, and I'll leave resources linked in the description box if you are interested in learning more about veganism and sort of the reasons to why it's important. I started to think about what I was wearing, or sort of clothing I was buying, how I was entertaining myself, what kind of hygiene and makeup products I was buying, and cleaning products, and there's like a whole world you need to sort of look into when you go vegan that maybe you didn't think about before. Obviously there's animal testing, and there's animal products and things that maybe you wouldn't think there would be, like in, for example, wine or other alcoholic beverages. That was quite a surprise for us anyway. And I learned so much from social media as well back then, from blogs and especially from Instagram, where this whole world was opening up to me, and so many people were very generous with sharing information and recipes. And this is really what inspired me to start my channel, or my channels as well. I didn't do YouTube back then. I didn't even know what YouTube was, but I started my Instagram account, and I sort of wanted to give back to the community that had helped me, and help other people try out vegan recipes, and hopefully go vegan as well. And I guess that's what's brought us here today, with me sitting here in this chair chatting to all of you. And I'm so grateful to have this community, and being able to share my recipes and my story with you. And I hope in me sharing this that I can, show you that there's not just one way to end up at the destination of going vegan, or being vegan. Because for me, it started with a sort of health concern that snowballed with the influence of other people and information that's all around, into me actually making that final ethical decision of going vegan. This ethical connection is what's at the core of veganism. I mean, it's about wanting to not harm animals and wanting the best for them, and not participating in hurting them. And while at the start of my vegan journey, I was more interested in the health aspects of veganism, today my main motivation lie in animal welfare, and knowing that I am doing my best not to contribute to the suffering of animals. About 70 to 150 billion animals are killed every year for human consumption, human pleasure, and I mean, can you even imagine 70 to 150 billion animals is crazy to me. And I'm just happy that I'm not contributing to that. And in addition to the animals that suffer within this factory farming industry that we have today, which is sadly the norm for how meat is produced, if you can even call it production, I don't know, is that, you know, humans that work in factory farming also usually fare badly from those working conditions. It's usually not a good working place, it's usually not a well-paid job, and it's usually quite horrific to work in a place where animals are being killed all day, every day. And from understanding this about factory farming, it actually opened up my eyes to see also that humans suffer in many ways in our food chain as well, not just in the animal farming industry, but also in vegetable farming and wine farming. I think we've heard a lot about, you know, avocado farmers lately, and this has informed my choices about how I eat overall. So I definitely choose more fair trade products and think about not buying these products where humans suffer as well, because veganism should sort of include all living beings, and I think that's important. It's something that's informed a lot of choices in my life since going vegan. Another great motivator for me to be vegan and stay vegan is the climate. And I think that in the last few years, many of us have become more aware of how our diet affects the climate and how our whole food system, how that affects the climate, and especially the animal agriculture section of our food system. It's been said now many times that having a plant-based diet is one of the best things you can do as an individual to have a lesser impact on the climate. And this was most notably said by a report from the UN, but I'll leave a few resources down below if you're interested in learning more about the environmental impact of our diets. Of course, we also need collective action in many fields, on many levels, to reach our climate goals. But I take a lot of solace in knowing that by eating a plant-based diet and thinking about my food choices in general, eating more seasonally, etc., that has a lesser footprint on our earth. And with that said, I know that not everyone can be vegan or have the opportunity to be vegan. I mean, we live in a world where not everyone has food on the table for the day. So I just wanted to say that I pass no judgment on people, other people, when it comes to sort of choosing a vegan diet. It's not possible for everyone, but it is possible for many of us. And I think it's important to speak about these things and being mindful and reminding each other of how important our choices are if we are able to make these types of choices. And finally, of course, there are health benefits to eating a plant-based diet, especially if you're focused mainly on whole foods, or at least eating mostly whole foods. That's grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. If you center your diet around that, you can get lots of good, healthy nutrients into your body. And of course, that's a good thing. For me, of course, changing to a plant-based diet helped me with my IBS. It's definitely gave me back my energy from having been quite low and ill in that part of my life. But veganism is definitely not a cure-all, which I think some people have been led to believe, and I don't want to put veganism out there as this kind of cure-all. But there are, like I said, definitely health benefits. Most vegans eat more fiber, eat less saturated fat, have an easier time getting, the 5 fruits and veggies a day that are recommended. And actually, it's even better if you get more than 5 a day. And something that I think is really interesting is this intersection between what's good for our planet and what's healthy for our bodies. And there was a study a couple of years ago that came out by the Eat Lancet Commission, I think it's called, and their report speaks about how a plant-based diet is positive both for our own health and for the environment, and they have pretty good guidelines in that report as well, so I'll leave it in the description box if you're interested in checking it out. I think there's also a podcast about this report where they sort of break it down, so I'll link that as well. I think it's super interesting, maybe you will too. And this sort of brings us towards the end of this video. I know this wasn't a deep dive into veganism or motivations for veganism, but like I said, there will be plenty of links to resources in the description box. Another person that I want to mention in the video that I think has great vegan resources is Earthling Ed. So I'll leave that link down below, like I've said a million times now. And I hope you found it helpful to hear me talk a little bit about how I ended up here where I am today, and hearing a little bit about what motivates me to be vegan as well, because motivation is really important for staying vegan. You need to know your why so that you can sort of bring that to life. And with that said, this video is coming to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you next week when I'm taking you along for a little grocery shop. I'm going to show you what I buy as a vegan, sort of on a weekly basis, and also show you my pantry staples. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Bye.